355 is the first official movie release of 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. We made it. Instead of a cheapo horror movie coming out in the first week of January, we got a big budget spy action film. So, yippee? I don't know. This movie is directed and written by Simon Kinberg. This movie stars Jessica Chastain, Sebastian Stan, Lupita Nyong'o, Diana Krug, Penelope Cruz, Bing Bing Fan. Oh my gosh, what a big cast here. And this movie focuses on a group of female spies that are on their own from their own government. They've gone rogue, and they kind of cross paths at one point and decide they have to work together to get MacGuffin thing. And it's really empowering and really special. Although they're using that as a disguise for what this movie actually is, which is a Jessica Chastain vanity project. We'll talk about that later. I was never really excited for this movie because the first thing I heard about it when they announced the idea was Simon Kinberg, he's directing and writing it, which was like a big dead giveaway of, oh no, this isn't going to be as good as it needs to be, right? Because I remember in 2019 when he also directed and wrote Dark Phoenix. It was his feature directorial debut. He directed the finale of the season 1 Twilight Zone by Jordan Peele, and then he did Dark Phoenix right after. And it was just not a good, satisfying finale, and since he's the man who has been writing a lot of those movies and producing a lot of them too, he's had a long career of producing, and a lot of it is X-Men, it just seemed like he didn't even really understand his own characters, his own storylines, so it was just, what a disappointing letdown. I did not think the movie was particularly that great. I didn't really think his direction was all that bad in it. Like the action was like watchable at least. But at the same time, those action scenes mostly involved a lot of visual effects, so you kind of do need, you know, a steadier camera so those visual effects artists can actually work on it. Now you're contrasting that with this movie, which is a bunch of spies, like practical, real people doing, you know, stunts and all that. And when they promoted it as like the studio that brought you Jason Bourne, I was like, well, that can only mean one thing. They're probably going to shake the camera up a lot. So I was not sure how to feel about this movie going in with him attached. The trailers didn't really do anything for me. So the first couple minutes of this movie, the first act, it just proved everything that I feared right. I don't think Simon Kinberg was the right man to make this at all. Maybe produce it, sure. Write it and direct it. I don't think so. Because the action sequences, just to get that out of the way, because that was the most thing I was like frustrated by. This is a man who has, as I've said, had a long career in Hollywood and directed fairly decent action sequences in Dark Phoenix. Even if they aren't like the greatest thing in the world, they were like totally watchable at least. And this movie, the way he helms it is alike doing Jason Bourne, where the camera's shaking everywhere, but it also seems like they're also trying to add some kind of style to it because they're doing like, you know, quick zooms and like quick pan overs to, it's like they're trying to add style to some of these action sequences, to some of the cinematography, and none of it really blends together to form a cohesive action scene. You know, I was just, the only thing I could sort of kind of make out was like a training fight between Chastain and just some random dude that lasted 30 seconds, and it's not supposed to be an actual fight. But that's the best action scene in the movie, because even though that even has the shaky cam, I could make that out the most. Everything else is just so, like, you're trying to make out what these people are actually doing, and you can't. Like, it also kind of gives the vibe that maybe they weren't that physically convincing, so let's shake the camera up so you can do the moves, but because the camera's shaking, you can't, as an audience member, you can't entirely take in everything that's going on. So that's how they get around it. It became kind of noticeable during a fight between Chastain and, like, this bigger dude at like a party, where the scene like kind of goes on and on. They keep cutting away from it and cutting back, but there became a point where the camera didn't cut and it was still shaking and moving around as Chastain did her thing, and I was like, I feel like it doesn't have the weight or like the intensity that a lot of other spy movies have. I think it's because, you know, they just didn't really properly stage this right or choreograph it right, and that's why they're shaking the camera a lot, because a lot of this action is unconvincing and they know it. There's moments in these action scenes though where I'm like, that's not a bad idea. Like there's a moment where like Edgar Ramirez does something to get away from Sebastian Stan when he's like closing in, and I thought like, hey, in any other movie where the camera is still and you can make out, you know, the tension building and then the release of that would be really cool. That would be a really cool thing that you did. There's moments like that of action where you can kind of make out like that's not a bad idea, but it's just always hampered down with the terrible directing by Simon Kinberg. And not only is the editing in the action scenes bad, but then throughout the rest of the movie, there's moments where the editing is just flat out pretty terrible. Where even like the most basic of cuts leave me feeling disoriented because I'm like, whoa, why are we cutting to this angle? Are they, I guess they're in the same place. Oh my gosh, it threw me for a second. You know, it just, you never really felt like Simon Kinberg had a firm grasp on what this movie needed to be. It feels very much so like a, well, I gotta direct this movie kind of vibe, so I don't know, I guess I know how to direct a movie, sure. And that felt like the approach. I wonder if it was something like, you know, Jessica Chastain had the idea because she is one of the producers on this movie, and when Simon Kinberg was like, hey, do you want to be in Dark Phoenix smoking a cigarette? She was like, A also smokes a cigarette. I will, but only if you get me funding for the 355, the spy movie idea that's about all 5 of these women, but mostly me. I wonder if that's what happened because it didn't feel like his heart was really in it. Maybe getting somebody else would have been better. I'm not really one to say like, you know, if it's a movie about a woman, you have to get a woman director. Obviously, we've seen, you know, many movies where men have directed women, and you know, there's great ones out there. I think it really just depends on whether that director is actually skilled enough to handle the material. And in this case, Simon Kinberg is not a name that's like, yeah, we want this guy. So I am kind of confused, like if this is a movie that is supposed to be kind of empowering for women, yes, a women's spy film, why not get a woman director, you know? Like what's Catherine Bigelow doing right now? I honestly have no idea, but I just thought about like, you know, if Catherine Bigelow made this movie, it probably would be actually really intense and really emotional and all that. I think she would have made a really fantastic movie out of this. It's too bad that this is like kind of below Patty Jenkins' caliber too, because she would have done a good job with this. Kate Shortland, who just did the Black Widow movie. I'm kind of iffy on Black Widow, but the action is better in that, you know, even if it's not the best thing in the world, the action, you can make it out. So, you know, there's a number of other directors out there that they could have, you know, contacted or at least even discovered, you know, to take on this material, to actually have a passion for it, because Simon Kinberg, man, I don't think he's got it. I think, you know, he can still be a producer, but as far as directing, I don't think he's got it. Or he needs to take a couple directing classes, take some more notes from some of these other directors he's worked with. Maybe he's learned the wrong lessons, it seems like. But then you have the other end of that where he's also the writer on this movie, and there's so many lines of dialogue that just suck. You know, there's so many, like, groaners of lines in this movie, and so many moments where it even feels like some of the actresses are delivering it just fairly unconvincing, probably because they don't really know how to carry it. They're not directed well enough. Like, if you want me to mention some of my favorites in this movie as far as the cast goes, because this movie is not devoid of talent, you know, the actresses mostly all do a pretty solid job. You know, Diana Kruger probably being my favorite out of them. You know, she had the most interesting character to me, and Diana Kruger actually, like, performed it really well. And then you have also Lupita Nyong'o, who's also really great in this, you know. She's got a really great chance to shine and actually kind of steal some scenes. She actually has a lot of charisma, and I could totally see her like leading her own like spy action thing. You know, it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. I thought those two really stood out. Penelope Cruz is even good as far as like a fish out of water, the kind of thing, like I just want to get back to my family, but uh-oh, I'm along on a plot, you know? Like, she's not totally bad in this at all either. Like I would say she's good. Jessica Chastain, though, occasionally she's all right, but then there's other times where I felt like, is she the right person to play this role right here? Because there's so many times where she delivers a line of dialogue almost unsure of herself, and there's constant moments where she, like when she's trying to talk over comms, everybody else is noticeably just talking to the air of like, I've got a comm in my ear, but I am just talking as I walk. Jessica Chastain always, she's not doing like, let me put my finger in my ear. She's like, it's like she's trying to talk into her sleeve. Like her mic for the thing is in her sleeve, and she's like, I'm going in, guys, or something like that. It's like, I have no idea why she was directed to do that. It doesn't come back in the script. It's not like one of those clever scripts where it's like, hey, we're gonna make fun of this trope of putting the finger to the ear because funny, right? They don't even do that. They don't even bring it up. It's just everyone else is just walking and being, you know, calm and collected, and Jessica Chastain is like, what'd you say, guys? I'm talking to somebody in an earpiece and I'm supposed to be incognito. What's going on? And like a crowd of people that can see her. It's amazingly awful direction. But then it also feels like there's other scenes where it almost feels like they don't care if anyone else knows that they're spies or not, because like I was laughing pretty hard in the beginning when like the first like chase scene happens, like the first official action scene with Jessica Chastain and Diane Kruger, and it's like this big explosion of like, oh my gosh, they got the thing, and they have to like start running. Sebastian Stan's like flipping out and throwing stuff around in public. It's like, do they care if anyone knows that they're spies or not? It never feels like there's any attempt to really do anything stealthy or like try to keep something contained. It's just always like a big explosion of doing stuff. But it's not a big explosion of doing stuff that fits right in the context of the scene either. Like if the characters are kind of in a more like private space, or if it's like the opening of Casino Royale, where it's like, you know, it's Daniel Craig who's very hard edged, like I don't give a fuck what's going on, you know? But instead in this movie, it's like, you know, these people kind of care about their jobs. They take pride in the fact that they're good at what they do, and then they just act like a bunch of amateurs, you know, and instead of having anything locked down. The beginning of this movie also has a fairly obvious twist that it's impossible not to spoil, but I'm gonna try not to, where a certain character gets cornered by, you know, characters who you know as the bad guys, and then they cut away, and then the next time they mention it, they're like, oh yeah, this person died. And then the character who's receiving this news is like, oh my gosh, I'm so distraught, this is really terrible, I was really close to that person, only to find out later, dun dun dun, they're still alive. Which is obvious because they didn't show somebody getting shot, they didn't show a body later, they didn't do any work to potentially convince any stupid audience member that this character was actually dead. Because it's just so obvious. There's no way that even like somebody who's never seen a movie before could probably go in and realize that they didn't show the death for a reason and go like, oh, I bet the twist is that they're in on an evil plot and they're still alive later. It's crazy that they thought the audience was that dumb. The villains aren't even that intimidating either. They're nothing to write home about. They're just like, hey, we're gonna do some evil stuff and we're devoid of all personality. One of the other villains, who is the twist one I mentioned earlier, is completely hampered down by that twist and the fact that it seems like they're tired a lot of the time they're on screen. Occasionally they're like, okay, let me rise to the intensity needed, but then they're like, I don't know, I don't really want to be here, whatever. You know, it's just, nothing was clicking with any of like the character narratives, even though there's good ideas for the characters. As I mentioned before, Penelope Cruz is kind of the fish out of the water, just wants to get home to her family. Lupita Nyong'o, you know, she's out of the life, but Jessica Chastain drags her back in. She keeps calling her boyfriend like, I'll be back for dinner. Whoops, I'm not, you know. And then you have Diane Kruger, who has like some, you know, father figure mentor in her agency, but also has a tragic backstory with her actual father, you know, and there's interesting stuff to be had with some of these plot lines, and then they don't do anything with them. So even like the main plot overall, like concerning this tech MacGuffin, you know, it's not a bad idea for a spy film, and even having these different agents from different agencies going rogue and meeting up team. It's not a bad idea at all. It's just what they do with it never really worked. It seems like there's no real time for them to actually like bond, get over any differences. It seems like we're gonna have some turmoil for a bit, and then we're gonna have like the meeting point where we're like, all right, we're gonna point our guns at you, but we need each other, so let's put them down now. And then that's the rest of the movie. They're totally fine, and it seems like there's just no like personal conflict at all. It doesn't help that like so many of like the introductions just felt fairly rushed for me. And you know, it's not even really the introductions, it's a lot of the other stuff with their like plotting as well that just feels pretty rushed. Like I did not really get a time to actually like Jessica Chastain or like get to know anything about her life. I know the basic of she really loves her agency and maybe wants to start a family, or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she doesn't. It's leaning more so that she doesn't. And that's kind of all you really get to know about her. There's no real point where you learn why Lupita Nyong'o maybe has a distaste for going back to the field, why she needs this normalcy. It's just, it's normalcy. So of course I would want that. They don't really want to focus on it or explore any of like the personal reasons why, the more interesting, you know, character emotion things that they could be exploring, especially later in the movie when they probably should. Fuck it, I'm gonna spoil it because I don't think anyone really cares about this movie, so spoilers from here on out. I did not like this movie, don't go see it. Let's talk about spoilers. So it comes to a certain point in the movie where, you know, they think they've got the thing, we got it, we're going home, everything's done, and then, you know, bad guys come in. Sebastian Stan, he's the bad guy. Plot twist, he comes storming in like he's half asleep, like, guys, I'm the villain, and look at these video monitors, we got guns to your, you know, people you care about's heads, you know, and one by one, a lot of them get shot and killed. The only one that lives is Penelope Cruz's family. And in this scene where, you know, Penelope Cruz is really scared for her family who ultimately live, You have Lupita Nyong'o, who her boyfriend gets shot, and she cries, like, tears streaming, like Us kind of vibes, which, that really great performance. And then you have Diane Kruger, who watches her father figure mentor get shot, and she's just kind of like, oh, well, that shit happened. I don't know. Whatever. And just they move on fairly quickly. They don't even give her reaction shot where she maybe like sheds a tear or like personally even reflect. She doesn't need to cry. Just have her personally reflect or something. Have a speech about it. Something like that. And they don't even do that. Bing Bing Fan, her father gets shot right in front of her. And it seems like she doesn't care either. Like she shows like no emotion, which is incredibly odd because her father's like right there. And like she works with her father. Like that's their dynamic as part of their agency. What the fuck? But I was thinking like, okay, now that, Sebastian Stan has done this thing, they're gonna really like go in on him later, especially Lupita Nyong'o. I bet Lupita Nyong'o is gonna have like the killing blow on this. She's gonna scream at him, have like some killer Oscar-worthy monologue because she's that great of an actress. And what does she do? Nothing. What happens is after she's done crying, she's like, don't worry, my head's totally in the right space. We can do this mission. They do the mission. And that's it. They do the mission. Nobody lands a killing blow on Sebastian Stan. What happens is that they get arrested. They injure him. Penelope Cruz does because that's her big like, oh yeah, I'm a big gun-shooting agent now. They get arrested, but then 2 months later, they break out. They confront him. Technically, because it's mostly Jessica Chastain, giving him a big speech while everyone else just stands in the background essentially going, yeah, what the boss said. And then it just wraps up afterwards and they're like, all right, I guess we're still on the run. See you guys later. And they just all part ways like that. That's how they all part ways. And I was very disappointed because Lupita Nyong'o, in that scene they highlight specifically, Lupita Nyong'o is crushed. She's devastated. So is she going to land the killing blow on Sebastian Stan? Is she going to scream at him? Is she going to have like a good resolution where it's a little sad because she has to pick up the pieces, find a new normal, but she's doing the work to get there. She's not going to let this keep her down forever because she needs to be her own person. No, what happens is nothing. It's there. Why I'm so disappointed in this movie, why it's so frustrating, is that they have these other interesting characters. They set up some interesting dynamics that you wish you could see more of, and what they do is, it's all just there so you can get to this scene, the bam, 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 a lot of them are dead scene, and then just nothing else comes from that. It's just, that's it. The characters are still there. They still have to go forward and act like this stuff still affects them, and they don't. It's all focused on just Jessica Chastain because the movie highlights her as if she's the one who you should feel the most for. That's why she gives the speech to Sebastian Stan at the end when they poison him. And it's like, that's why she gets the last shot of the movie where she fucking, like, a bus goes by and she just fucking disappears. That shit sucked too. But that's besides the point. That's a terrible ending. But like, that's it. Like they give her the big spotlight because she's the producer on this movie, so she probably thought, I'm the big star here, I'm the most important character, so everyone else can just watch me and Stan do this because that's a cool, team girl moment, but it's mostly about me, Jessica Chastain's character, whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. And honestly, it's really embarrassing. Compare Jessica Chastain's like wishy-washy family nonsense and just, Sebastian Stan, he lied to me thing with like Diane Kruger's like more interesting thing that they barely spend any time actually like psychoanalyzing or focusing on. Or even like Penelope Cruz's more like comedically interesting one, or Lupita Nyong'o's. It's just, let's focus on Jessica Chastain, who like it gets so upset at one point that she just starts firing a gun just wildly without even thinking like, oh yeah, I'm a spy, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. It's very disappointing. Bing Bing Fan, by the way, this was something I noticed. She looks green screened in every single shot. Like, not even kidding. Like, okay, for like example, like sometimes when the camera's far enough away, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, she's in the same room as them, what are you talking about? But for so many like close-ups of her, where it's like, I'm saying a line of dialogue right now, the camera cuts noticeably just close on her, and all of a sudden the background looks a little blurry. It doesn't even look like the same lighting as like the other scenes they're shooting in the same spot, you know what I mean? Like the other angles they cut to, doesn't look like the same lighting. It just feels very disconnected from like the other people that she's supposed to be working off of, and it happens so many times where it's like she's literally the only one on the camera right now. The background looks blurry. There's no proof that there's any other actors with her at the moment because she's the only one in the shot, but she's with them in the other angle. what? You know, it was, I couldn't tell if it was like a reshoot thing, like, okay, I don't know, we fucked up some of her dialogue or something like that, I don't know, so let's reshoot some stuff and that's all they had to do, or if it was like, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea why it looks that bad. Another thing that's confusing about this movie is I'm not sure if they're trying to have like a larger message or not, because there's things that they seemingly accidentally stumble upon. Like there's a guy at the CIA who's like, Jessica Chastain telling a story, what a joke, right? You know, like I'm a man agent and I do not believe this woman agent. I'm the better agent because I'm a man. It had that kind of feel to it, and the character pops up again later. And kind of like a weird kind of confrontation where he doesn't believe her, of course, but it's not interesting, and they don't do anything with it. It's just like, I can't tell if they're actually trying to like have some kind of like, you know, we're women persevering in a male-dominated world or anything like that. It just, I have no idea exactly what their message is, because sometimes they act like that's what they're doing, but most of the time it's just a dumb spy movie, so I don't know. I can't tell what they're trying to say about some of the basic character elements. Like, are they trying to talk about, like, the past trauma of Diane Kruger and take that seriously? Are they trying to talk about, you know, having a normal life, you know, disassociating from government work? Are they trying to talk about not, you know, trusting your government completely, everyone's corrupt? Are they trying to talk about anything? And it seems like they're not. It seems like they have talking points, and they worked them all into the script, but they had no idea what to actually say about them, so they just included them, and they just kept the dumb movie going. I feel like there's stuff that I've missed about this movie, because there's like so much, because when I walked out of it, I was like, okay, pros. The acting is not all bad. They have certain character storylines that I was interested in, and they weren't bad ideas at all, even though I hated how they resolved it by not doing anything with it. You know, the overall plot is not a bad idea at all, and there's some moments in the action where I was like, that could have been cool. You know, so there is some pros with this movie, but I kept thinking about it more, and it was like, you know, even the things that I liked have that little bit of like, well, but this though, and it's a negative. It hampers down what could have been just a mediocre movie into an even worse one. I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting to mention, like the score is fairly generic. Like I don't know what else to say, because I feel like I've covered it all, but there could be more, because I feel like there was more when I was watching it where I was like, this is really stupid, this dialogue sucks, what is with this shot right here, what is with this editing, oh my god, you know, are they saying anything? Or are they not saying anything? Do they just want to be a big dumb spy movie? Then why are they even bothering with some of these other elements? This movie sucks. I'm gonna give the 355 a D. I really dislike this movie. This could have been something that was really good. It's not a bad idea. Maybe get the right people for it next time. Maybe Simon Kinberg writing and directing is an awful idea. Maybe Jessica Chastain, instead of being the lead producer on this and having none of the other actresses be producers on this, maybe you should give them producer credits, you know, so they can actually go like, hey, can my character have like, you know, a resolution, you know, because you're the only one who's technically kind of getting one. And it's really unfair when this movie is technically about how we are different, diverse women coming to work together, and that's not bad because we have our own unique stories and our own unique skills. Why are we just highlighting you, Jessica Chastain? You're literally the most unconvincing one out of all of us. So yeah, don't see this movie, but if you have already seen this movie, sorry, but what did you think of it? Leave in the comments below, what did you think? But as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.